Okay, I'm at the Circle S, the home of Juanita McClanahan's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Art Sanders, and I'm going to interview them, and we're going to have a lot of fun, so stay tuned.
Well, my father came from Gallipolis up on Greasy Ridge, Ohio, and he came here when he was 21. I think my mother was here on a visit from Elizabethtown, Ohio. They met at some kind of a school function. They were married about 1888. My sister was born in 89. I was born in Oxford, Indiana. At that time, my father was running a wheel and machine shop. He built wheels. He had a blacksmith shop connecting with his woodworking shop. Well, within a year or two, they had moved to a big farm up just right east of Fowler. Been a pretty bad year. The year before, my father lost one of his horses. He had a chance to buy that farm, I think about $40 an acre, but he thought that it'd be so hard, you know, to be in debt. So he came then to a farm down north and east of Templeton. And he rented that farm for several years. He moved from the farm and bought a store and a hotel. I think that's a big mistake he made. Had a pretty good grocery store, and well, we had lots of hotel business. It was a big building. We could keep, I expect, 10 or 15 people at night. So we lived right in that hotel.
Oh, you lived there.
And our fee, I think, was $3.75 or $4 a week. It was along about 1905 or 6.
Oh, up in here. Then you were a young man then, a young adolescent.
I was a bad boy. The first 3 years in school, there was just one in my class, and
you were it.
So I was it. Of course, I had to do a lot of monkey shines, I suppose, in order to keep the school busy laughing. This special time, I don't know what I did, but the teacher says, "Arthur, you go up there and stand in the corner." So they still kept laughing. So I bounced that straw hat upside down on my head, you know. So she said, "You come up here and stand behind me." Well, nobody could see me. So finally, somebody knocked on the door at the schoolhouse, and she sent one of the kids to the door, and I didn't know who it was at the time, but I could hear him titter and, you know, laugh. And finally, I looked out, and that hat fell off my head. And he said, "You can go to your seat now, Arthur," and that was my mother that had come to visit the school. And I had a teacher set me on her desk with a dunce cap over my face.
What did you do to deserve that?
Just nothing mean. I think I was the only one that they ever set up on her desk with a dunce cap on.
How many students were they all told in that one?
I would say there was about 7 or 8 in the class. Yeah, until I got in the 4th grade, and then different, of course. I had more competition. And they took me from the 3rd grade to the 5th. And I could read good, you know, and I could figure pretty fast, and they thought, well, I might just well bounce him up a grade. My sister was 2 grades ahead of me, and when I started in school, I knew everything in the 1st and 2nd reader, because she'd read it and I'd read it. We had no spelling book with a round circle on the outside, and that was for the 3rd and 4th grades. And then from there on, you got into hard words. And I loved to spell, and there wasn't a week we didn't have those ciphering and spelling matches.
Did you win the spelling matches?
Oh, yeah, I won a lot of them. I spelled it, when I was in the 3rd grade, I spelled out in school on the word immense. And I spelled out a big gal, oh, she's big as you. And she was up about 7th or 8th grade. And boy, I thought I was something. So the teacher called me up there, and he held out 3 pencils. And he aimed for me to take one, and I took all 3 of them.
That was your prize. Huh?
Well, he says, I didn't mean for you to take all of them, so I handed him back to him. 'My dad ran the store there at Templeton, and they had a racetrack just about, hardly a quarter mile above the edge of Templeton. And they bring Dan Patch down there training. He was raised in Oxford. And a man by the name of Stevens, Jim Stevens, he knew my parents well. And I'd go down there and watch them train them out, you know, on certain mornings of the week. And then they'd unrein them and put a big blanket on them. And that Mr. Stevens, he'd set me on that cart and let me ride around there behind Dan Patch. But I'm afraid to tell people that, because I'm sure they'll say he just wants in on the act. He's one of the greatest horses in the world. And I think he's the only horse that never lost a complete race. 1906, I started in high school at Oxford and finished in 1910. We had, I think, 26 members in our class in high school. I wouldn't study. I got most of it without, and I could have done better.
I was good in history and geography, I like that.
You still like that, don't you?
Yeah.
You still like that.
I still like it.
I took a teacher's training course at Valparaiso, Indiana, and I could have gotten to school for $41.50 a month. Well, I guess maybe it might have been $42.50. Anyhow.
That's not much better. What did teacher training consist of in those years? You
Well,
went to
psychology, methodology, pedagogy, teacher's arithmetic, teacher's grammar, penmanship, and debating.
What was pedagogy?
Well, that's teaching.
That's how to teach.
How to teach. And I had good grades. I had an A certificate, but I never did use it. When I got out of that college, I could work almost any problem that was workable. You know, I could read it and understand it more. I had a good education. I had a good high school education, and I had a good teacher's training. But I could have drawn about $42.50, I think, for teaching, and I had to live in the country, and pay board, and either walk to school or own a horse and buggy. And that was pretty tough.
I visited some friends, some of my relatives at Oxford. That's where I met him. And one of my cousins said, get a date with him. He just strutted up and down the aisle, you know, twist, a little bit twist. And, I don't know.
Well, tell him I had a lot of good heavy hair and all that stuff.
Heavy
I
hair?
looked a little bit different from what I do now.
He had brown curly hair.
And that's why you married him, because he had brown curly hair.
No. Oh, I like it.
Well, what was it about her that made you want to go out with her?
She liked looking.
Well, looks are only skin deep, you know. The prettier the handle, the poorer the umbrella. That's
Well, that could be true, but... While I worked at the light plant, a man that I'd known a good many years, he ran a grocery store up at town, and he come to me and he says, if you'll take charge of my store and let me get out where I don't have to worry about all that stuff, he says, I'll pay you more than you're getting here at the light plant. I told him I'd do it. As soon as I gave him notice, and I got another man, I broke him in. And, so I started working at the grocery store, and there was no fella in there, oh, I hate to tell this, but it's true. He was a pretty good old man, but he wouldn't mind. And so I'd get everything cleaned up, and I'd get a little pile of tin stuff with broken off boxes, and I'd take it over and put it back right where the baker could use it to start his fire. Well, that old man invariably would go in and carry that out and put it right out where I carried it away from him. And I told him about it, told him. So he says, one morning he says, I know what you're looking. He just come up and shook his fist right in my face. Now I said, Mr. Tharp, you're an old man. And if you don't get in your place, you're going to land over there in that corner. And he believed me. He'd have better. So I went right away to my boss, and I told him what had happened. Well, he says, I'll get rid of him. No, I said, don't you do that. He probably needs a job. Mm-hmm. And so, but it happened right at that time. This man owned the store. His nephew ran the Union grocery delivery. And he wasn't a very strong fellow. He said he'd gotten awful tired of it and he couldn't keep up the payments on his truck. Wouldn't know if I'd take it off his hands, so I did. Well, we've had time, I'll tell you, but I wouldn't change a bit of it.
We had about a $2.50 grocery bill. Groceries weren't high then like they are now.
I've sold many a loaf of bread, 3 loaves for a dime. When they'd have a war on, you'd sell 7 for a quarter, 8 maybe sometime. You know, wars between the two bakeries. Like those donuts we had this morning, we had bigger donut things that almost melt in your mouth. 10 cents a dozen.
Yeah,
Bake them right there in the shop. We made fruit bar cookies, as good as could be made, put the best of everything in them, 10 cents a dozen. And Scotch cookies, sugar cookies, lemon.
Well, you had more than a grocery store then. You had
I had a
bakery too.
Grocery and bakery combined. And we sold many a sack of flour for $1.50. That was for a 49-pound sack of flour. And of course, we'd like to show how strong we were. And a man would haul with his steaming wagon, haul those sack of flour up and where they load them out of the car. We got bakery flour in 98-pound sacks, and we'd let them stack 3 of those 98-pound sacks on our shoulder, and we'd carry it inside and let the other fellow stack them.
What, was all the girls watching?
No, that's when it was working. There's nobody watching.
He was over at a Redmond, I think, the lodge that night. And I was going out in the country. Went out there for something, I don't know what, a meeting. And when I came home, our youngest son wasn't home. And he was up there in that store,
I had
locked
in
in.
the store.
How did you remember that?
Well, I knew right away. He said, "Where's Lil?" Oh, I said, I locked him up in that store.
Well, he had been in there, you know, with his dad, and he went back there and got up in a big chair and went to sleep.
So finally somebody come to me and said, "That boy's up there in the store." Well, I said, "I'm on my way to get him now." Boy,
Was he mad at you?
oh no, he was just glad to get out of there. Funny part of it was, there's about 5 or 6 young fellas that knew me, that was outside of that store teasing him. And they said, "Go back there behind the counter and get you some candy." He says, "I don't want any candy."
He wanted out of there, you know.
I was always in a hurry. You
Yeah.
know, I guess I had a habit of kind of going on the run. I hurried out to the car, Model T Ford, and cranked it up and got in there and backed out. It was over pretty close to the fence, closer than I usually got. I started forward. I heard a little cry. Hind tire was sitting on both her knees.
Oh, my.
Of course, I could lift anything about. I got out of there and got a hold of that wheel and shoved it forward and kicked her out of there.
How old was she?
Oh, what was it?
Just walking, learn to walk.
But it didn't break any bones.
What she was taking the measles
Oh.
at the time. Our oldest son had the measles, and she was taking the measles. And she didn't feel good, you know, and she knew they were going someplace. She wanted to go with her father. And I was right behind her, but I couldn't catch her before she dodged under that fence and out there, and all happened so quick.
Then I worked at the Russ Gear for about 8 or 9 years, and things got so tough there in 1929, 30, 31. I got laid off. In a way, I was kind of lucky. I had to raise some livestock, and I had about $500 in the bank. So I went to that banker one day, and I said, I think his name was Clayton Smith. I said, "Clayton, what would you do with that money of yours?" He says, "I'd get it out of here and hide it." And I did, and I pretty much lost it 2 or 3 times.
But at least you didn't lose it in the bank.
No.
He gave you good advice then.
Well, yes, he was a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a tale. Then we had to have a sale. Out of that sale, I sold my best Jersey cow for $22.50. And the next best cow sold for around $19 to $21. And my heifers, I had 3 or 4 heifers that would be fresh in the spring, and they brought $15 apiece. I'm talking about good cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was all said and done, I had another $500. That's what I paid down on this farm. That second 500, and I used the first 500 to live on until we could make a living, you know. I paid $2,100 for this farm. It had a $1,500 and a $600 mortgage on it. And
They were anxious to sell land, you know.
here just a
Right, don't-
year ago last fall, I sold off 3 acres to the highway for $7,200. And then we just got finished up a deal where we sold the 40 acres across the road. Well, altogether we got $6,250 for it.
62,000.
I can't think of that. So after all the indebtedness except the capital gains tax, I got 2 checks that amounted to $55,000 after all, you know, the survey and the selling cost. That was $4,000 and something. I didn't know what to do with that money. Everybody says, I'll take care of it.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I guess you're all ready to help.
But I bet you it was more fun in the old days when you had to worry where that 500 was going to come from, right?
That's what I say. That's when we lived the best.
Now tell me in one sentence what your philosophy of life is.
Work. Action, I think, is covered most of it. Of course, you can't just work and not think. I think a person has to have, something to kind of sustain the reason why they work. You got to be paid for it some way or another. But I think a person could live in tire ease. I don't think that they're happy very long, or healthy either. I've had men say to me when I went to work down there at the Rusky every morning, I'd just like to walk out here today and never do another day's work in my life. And I told them that's crazy. There's been a lot of sadness there, too. Mother died, and so many things that, hung on for days and days. But you got to live with that stuff. You can't give up.
Tell me what sustained you through the hardships.
G-U-T-S. Well, it couldn't have been anything else.
That's right. That's right.
You're bound to have some bad days. I don't care whether you're on top or on the bottom. And I do think of some of the old hymns. It's pretty hard to beat that 23rd Psalm when it comes to meaning, My shepherd I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, that's part of it, but it wasn't always that.
That's good enough.
Maybe I don't get every word just right, but I believe I can quote about as much Bible as any minister in this state.